Hey folks, here's an interesting subject that has caught my attention recently. Um, for instance, I got a ukulele with a guitar capo in it, and it clearly doesn't fit a ukulele that well at all. It'll go on there, but it doesn't really hold the strings down. It's not designed for ukulele. It's designed for a guitar. Here is a standard plectrum pick that you get for free with a lot of guitar packages, and the question of the video today is how good are the accessories that come free with guitars or in guitar packages. Of course there is a variation of accessories. You do get some companies that are better than others, but I find that typically they use the same brands. For instance, I see a lot of ChromaCast stuff in the free giveaways, so it's very, very cheap. I actually buy ChromaCast bags myself when guitars don't come with bags and I want to sell them, that I have something to give someone. They're not high-end, but they're not the worst bags either. I bought a lot of bags in the past that the zippers break as soon as you pull them down. They just break. These I don't have a problem with. They're not highly padded or anything, but they're reliable, and I've been getting them, or at least I was getting them, for under $10 a piece, and I just noticed that my source just doubled the price, which really annoys me. And then you get usually with these packages really, really cheap picks like the ones I showed you. They're very rarely Dunlops or anything of a brand name. They're usually off-brand, probably purchased in bulk and then thrown into these packages, and they're okay for starter guitarists. A lot of experienced guitar players are probably just going to give them away or dispense with them, or use them, for emergency reasons. But they're going to have their own favorite picks if they use picks. So what I tend to see with free picks, I've got a bunch here. Here's one done by ChromaCast. They're just plastic picks. Here are some completely unbranded ones. Nice sort of fake tortoiseshell looking things in different colors. They often send you an assortment. Here's one that says buy from AGE, so that's a company that probably sells this stuff. There's another Chromecast one, and then just a plain black pick. These are made in bulk, and they break pretty easy. They usually send you mediums. Sometimes they'll send you an assortment, but they usually, if you're an aggressive strummer, they're probably going to last you 5-10 minutes, particularly the thinner ones. Some of them, will last for a beginning player, probably for a few months, until they learn about different accessory options and develop their own taste in things like picks. A lot of times they send you the cheap clip-on tuners. I don't see any here. I give them away when I get them. They're usually pretty decent. They're the ones that clip on the headstock, and they're sort of a cheap digital tuner, and they seem to work fine. Are they as good as a Korg tuner, or a, was it Peterson strobe? No, of course not. However, for a beginning player, it's a hell of a lot better than one of those pitch pipes they used to give you that I still see the odd guitar company doing, sending out the pitch pipes. This is an example of the Capo I showed you in the packaging. I got this one out, and it actually works just fine. It's got good tension, a decent spring. It actually works fine. It's probably a 8, 10, 12 dollar capo, and they probably get them, in bulk for $1 a piece, and they throw it in. So this is actually a pretty decent free capo that I got in a recent guitar package. As far as strings goes, they usually send you bulk off-brand strings. Every once in a while you'll get a company that'll include a brand name strings, perhaps if you spend a little bit more money for the guitar. I've noticed with things like some Yamahas, guitars that you buy, possibly Alvarez, Ibanez, those sorts of things, every once in a while you'll get included, especially if it's a package, a set of D'Addario phosphor bronze or something, one of the cheaper D'Addario strings, which are reputable and decent. A lot of times, though, they are off-brand or something akin to the budget brands that you find on eBay, like Alice strings, which people deride, but actually I've used some of those free strings that I've got with guitars, and they're actually not that bad. The Alice strings are actually fairly decent. I'm trying to remember the other brand that I often see. I can't think of it in a minute. That's also decent. Some of the ones that are unbranded, that just come sort of in clear packages with coiled strings, can be very, very cheap and probably not worth putting on your guitar or using as a spare, unless you break a string and you need one in an instant. You can put it on knowing that it's not going to be great quality and it's probably going to break sometime in the near future. So strings are usually fairly cheap and off-brand, and a lot of people just dispense with them, get rid of them, or just keep them as emergency spares. There's no real reason to put on those strings. Most people just buy their preference, string preference, unless you get a branded string in there, a string set like a John Pierce or a D'Addario. Occasionally I see Savarez in some of the guitar, classical guitar packages, and those are fairly decent. So the strings are sort of hit and miss, usually miss. The picks are usually fairly cheap. The tuners are cheap but usually work and get you by for a while, or are fine for beginners. And the capos, some of them are cheap, but most of them seem to work fairly well. I mean, it's a fairly simple concept. You have something that requires a tension spring to keep pressure, and if the rubber part here is sufficient in dampening the strings and not causing them to buzz, then usually a cheap capo seems to work just fine. I know that this is all subjective, and people will have their own favorite brands of capos and picks and stuff like that, and I'm not really putting this video up for that reason. I'm just talking about the typical free accessories that you tend to get with guitars. Another one that I haven't talked about that is usually fairly cheap is straps. I usually leave them in the cases when I resell the guitars, and knowing that the person that buys the guitar probably won't use it. They tend to be the more flimsy, cheaper, thinner types of straps, and most people will spend $15-20 and go out and get a nice leather strap or a strap with more substance that they're less worried is going to drop their guitar. Some of the ukulele straps are okay. Some of them are quite nice. I've had some quite colorful ones that work just fine. I don't use ukulele straps, so I never use them personally, but there are people that require them. They probably can use some of the straps that come with the ukuleles that I've seen, but a lot of the guitar straps are sort of the very thin, flimsy black or some other color Cordura, often with fairly cheap fittings. And if you've got a fairly expensive guitar, it's just worth upgrading and getting a better strap than the free one that you get with a lot of these guitar packages. So for that reason, whether a new guitar includes a little accessory package is meaningful to some people and not to others. I literally see people throw the bag away, like, oh yeah, cheap crap, gone. Or they give it to someone. I give them away. I don't use them personally. I keep some of the picks just so I have something to strum a guitar with, because I don't use picks a whole lot, so I don't keep like expensive picks around, and I tend to lose them. So I keep some of the picks. I give them away though. I usually keep a capo. They're useful for setup. If you take the strings off and you want to lock the strings in place, you can lock the strings here and then take the strings off at the saddle, and then you have them easy to put back on again. Or the other way around, you take the strings off at the head and lock them in place somewhere up here, so you can work on the neck down here. So they're useful for setup. So I usually keep one around. for that reason. And I occasionally use them in playing as well. Not as much as some people, but because I like to use bar chords if I can. But yeah, they're very useful, so I keep one around, and I give them away. I don't usually give them to ukulele buyers, though, because they don't work that well. They're very clunky on a ukulele, and they're not designed for a ukulele. They make a smaller ukulele capo, and I don't know why companies don't just get those instead of putting these massive things in with tiny little ukuleles. So I usually put them in, if I sell a guitar and I have extra capos or tuners, I throw them in the bags so that people can use them if they want to. Something else that always comes with guitars, almost all guitars, is one of these things, which is your truss rod wrench. I see this as more of a tool than accessory. I usually put these in the pockets of the cases with the guitars that they came with. So for instance, if this came with a Yamaha, I'll put it in the case that the Yamaha's in. Sometimes they send you extra stuff. You can see in this little package, you've got an extra saddle, which is quite nice, and one extra bridge pin. So if you break a bridge pin, you have an extra one, and I usually just pass these on to customers because I have a whole box of bridge pins and nuts, usually Graphtec or bone, and these tend to be plastic, the free ones, although this one actually looks like Graphtec. So yeah, and if I run low on parts, then I might keep them because the customer's probably not going to use it. But I always put the truss rod key in with the bag so they have it if they learn how to do a truss rod adjustment. It's there for them. And those come with just about every guitar that gets shipped to me, because although most truss rod screws tend to be the same 2 or 3 sizes, occasionally you get odd ones, so it's good to have an assortment of them. For instance, the Martin guitars that I have use a way different size from anything else. I think I have a Yamaha guitar I know I have a Yamaha guitar from the 80s, one of those SG series that uses a very different truss rod fitting, but most of them are 1 or 2 normative sizes, so that if you get a new guitar and you just keep this, normally it'll fit most of your guitars if you ever need to do a truss rod adjustment. Apart from that, I don't see too many other accessories. It's usually picks, strings, maybe a capo, maybe a strap, sometimes a lint-free cloth, which can be quite useful because with guitars you should know not to use pledge or any kind of furniture polish or anything like that, which can damage the finish, whether it's nitrocellulose or lacquer or polyurethane or something like that. It can eat and damage the finish. The best thing to do is if you get a free cloth with a guitar, just use it with nothing. Just use it as a dust cloth to wipe off dust and then DNA grunge after sweating all over the guitar or playing it at a club. Those can be useful. I have a whole box of cloths, and I use them, because I'm always doing work on guitars. They wear out fairly quickly, especially if you're doing fret stuff, and the fret ends tend to eat up the cloth. And I use them. They're great buffing cloths, polishing cloths, cleaning cloths. They're good for applying and wiping off lemon oil on the fretboard if you don't like using your fingers. Some people get skin irritations from that stuff. So the cloths are very useful. So it's nice when you get a little cloth with your instrument and you can use it. And I'd say keep a bucket and throw them in there every time you get one, because if you work on guitars, you'll use them. I mean, some of them are quite flimsy, and I use them for specific things like just fretboards if they're really small and flimsy. But if they're sizable cloths, they can be used for buffing, polishing, cleaning, that sort of stuff. And they're not abrasive, so they don't scratch up your finish. And they usually don't produce lint. So occasionally you'll get a cloth that is not very good quality and not worth keeping, but most of them can be used for something. Very similar to the kind of cloths you get for cleaning your glasses. Those of you who wear glasses, it's that sort of material. So those can be useful too. So yes, you can get some use out of these accessory packages that come with guitars, although it's not going to be the highest quality stuff, and you probably want to replace all of it at some point in the future. It'll get you by if you're a beginner, but as you learn about your instrument and all the accessories that are available to you on the market, you'll probably upgrade. Being thankful that you had something to get you through and something while you're learning. So hopefully this is helpful to some people. See you on the next video.